So the last lecture in the second module on equations, governing equations, deals with the boundary conditions and initial conditions. These are important because we have a partial differential equation, and the specification of the mathematical problem is not complete without the initial and boundary conditions as appropriate. So what kind of boundary conditions and initial conditions can we bring in here? Here we need to consider the concept of well-posedness in of a mathematical problem to answer the question, and the question is that what type of boundary conditions and how many boundary conditions are to be specified for to complete the mathematical problem. This depends obviously on the type of problem that we are considering here, and we would like to have as many as is necessary for a well-posed problem and only as much as is necessary for well-posedness of the problem. What do we mean by well-posedness? The well-posedness, it has an intuitive sense, that is, there should be a solution to the problem, to the mathematical problem that we are posing, and the problem, the solution, not only should it exist, it should be a unique solution, and thirdly, it should depend continuously on the initial and boundary conditions that we specify. So we are looking at the boundary conditions and initial conditions to make a difference to the solution that we get from the for the mathematical problem, because it's the same equation whether the flow of that particular fluid is going over a car or inside the car or inside a house, all those things. It's the same set of equations. What makes the problem different, one problem different from the other problem, must therefore come from the initial and boundary conditions that we specify. And here we would like to specify them in such a way that we have a solution and that the solution is unique, so that if a number of solutions are there for the same problem, then it's of no consequence, and if there is no solution also, it's of no consequence. And crucially, if the solution is very highly sensitive to the boundary conditions and initial conditions that we specify, then it's of no use. Or if it's not at all sensitive to the boundary conditions and initial conditions, then again it's of no good, because then in what sense is our solution unique? So it is the goodness of well-posedness of the mathematical problem is seen in the type of solution that it produces and the type of boundary conditions and initial conditions that we need to specify in order to get a good solution. And so it is together these complete the specification of the mathematical problem, and that is what we have in the slide here. A partial differential equation needs to have appropriate initial and boundary conditions for proper formulation of the mathematical problem, and what type and how many boundary conditions depends on the type of the problem. And concept of well-posedness is something that we have to keep in mind in specifying the boundary conditions, and the concept is that it's essentially that there should be a solution, and the solution should be unique, and it should depend continuously on initial and boundary conditions. So the last condition requires that a solution should exhibit good sensitivity to the initial and boundary conditions. A small change in these should also bring about a small change in the solution, and only a small change. If it's a precipitous solution, precipitous change to a small solution, then we have to worry about how accurately we have to specify the boundary conditions and initial conditions, and the question of how accurately we know and control these things in real cases also comes into picture. So we'll cut that particular sentence. Okay. So a small change in the boundary conditions should produce a sensitive change in the solution that we get for this. So that is the concept of mathematical problem, and how it is embedded in the equations is something that we need to examine, and what it actually means to the specific equations that we are solving is also very important for us, and only then we can think of the type of boundary conditions and what the concept of well-posedness means to us from a CFD point of view. Okay, so here we know that our Garnig equations are second order partial differential equations, and we are considering here a generalized second order partial differential equation involving two independent variables x and y. So this is a dou square phi by dou x square plus b dou square phi by dou x dou y plus c dou square phi by dou y square equal to d, and a, b, c, d are maybe nonlinear functions of x, y, phi, dou phi by dou x, dou phi by dou y, but not of second or higher derivatives. So it is in a way we are considering quasi-linear second order partial differential equation, which is the type of equations that we have. As we have seen in the last tutorial, all our Garnig equations are second order or less, and they are of this particular form in the general form of that we have written here. Okay. So this second order partial differential equation can be converted into two first order equations by writing dou psi by dou x equal to u and dou phi by dou y equal to v. We can convert into two coupled equations as shown here, and in order to look for the nature of the problem, okay, we know we talk about the hyperbolic and elliptic and all those kind of things. So in order to get a true sense of what is actually involved, and in order to relate to the earlier statements that we made about the directional advection and the adirectional diffusion concept that is embedded in our Garnig equations, we want to bring that into play here and see how it actually means to our boundary conditions. So here what we are looking at is that we are looking at a general second order partial differential equation. We have converted it to two first order equations, and we are looking for a plane like solution, plane wave type of a solution of this particular form. You have u and v. U is given in terms of u star times a travelling wave travelling in the direction n with direction cosines of nx and ny, and similarly v is also travelling in with an amplitude and a direction of propagation like this. So if these were to be solutions of this, when we substitute this into this, we should be able to get a condition for the existence of a non-trivial solution. So we substitute that u and v into that, and then we do some manipulation, and then we get a condition for non-triviality of the wave type of solution, and that is possible only if nx and ny, the directional cosines of the plane wave are such that they satisfy this equation, and the direction cosines are given by this equation minus b plus or minus square root of b square minus ac by 2a. It is very familiar, we are just deriving it in a proper way. So obviously there are two distinct roots are possible if b square minus ac is greater than 0, and that means that when you have two distinct real roots here, so that means that you have two travelling wave type of solution is possible, and that means that in such a case the equation that we started out with will exhibit a wave like solution, and any equation which exhibits a wave like solution with a well defined wave like character, so that is with a well defined direction of propagation and a velocity of propagation. So that kind of equation is said to be a hyperbolic equation. So you have a hyperbolic problem if you have a wave like solution is possible, okay. And what is important for us is that the initial and boundary conditions that we specify should obey this physics of the mathematical problem. So, what is the physics? That there is a wave-like solution with a well-defined sense of direction and magnitude of propagation, speed of propagation. So, if we do not obey this principle at any time during our specification of the problem or in the evaluation of the solution, then we can get into problems. So, this is something that we will see later on in terms of the solution, but this immediately brings us to the concept of domains of dependence and influence of the solution here. So, we are looking at the same at a two-dimensional case with x and t as the variables, and this is our solution space over a certain domain in the x direction over a period of time in the along the y axis here. And so, at this rectangle here defines the possible x and t values that we can exhibit, that the system can exhibit, and for a finite physical domain extending from 0 to x here, as time progresses this domain expands in the positive direction. And here in this domain, in this x and t, consider a point P here, and this is at a given x and at a given t. So, this P here, that is the solution at distance of x and time of t, is influenced by all the previous solutions, all the solutions within this triangle with given by this horizontal lines here. Okay. So, that means that the value of this P here depends on the value of P within this zone, and any solution outside this zone will not influence this. And how are these zones, how is this area identified? By the characteristic lines that we have evaluated based on these slopes here. So, you draw the lines and then extend it back all the way until you reach time equal to 0. Okay. So, this is a left turning characteristic and right turning characteristic, and then you bring them here, and then you have the values of the boundary. So, between A and B will influence the value of P here, and that means that P should be evaluated only with this set of boundary conditions and this set of initial conditions. So, when you have t equal to 0, whatever values of phi that you specify here become the initial conditions, and out of the initial conditions, those initial values that lie beyond B or before A here will not influence the solution at point P, but they may influence the solution at point Q here. This Q here is influenced by the values here, and any change in the value of B will not influence Q. Okay. Any change in the value initial condition at B prime will influence the value of P. Okay. And so, in that sense, if we have a solution scheme which expresses Q in terms of the solution at B, then it is wrong, because it should not depend as per this nature of the travelling wave type of solution. So, the initial condition at t equal to 0 at point B should not influence Q, and the initial condition at any point B prime between this A and B must influence point P. Okay. And so, this triangle PAB is the domain of dependence for point P, and that domain of dependence changes depending on where this point P is in this solution space. Okay. For Q it is different, and not only that, if you extend these lines further, the value of the solution at point P influences the values further downstream, but not all points here, only within the triangle PCD. So, the solution at point P here has a domain of dependence PAB and a solution, a domain of independence, which is PCD here. So, when we write down a finite difference approximations and all that, when we say that this value is given by the neighboring points, then it should be those neighboring points should lie within this domain of influence and domain of dependence. If not, then we can potentially get into problems. So, it is this idea that is that in a hyperbolic case only part of the initial conditions, not the entire value, not all values of over the entire domain will be influencing any point inside, only a certain portion of the initial condition will be influencing, is something that would be a characteristic nature of a hyperbolic problem. If you look at we need to do the editing, just 1 minute. Okay, we will start again. So, if you look at the other cases, parabolic and elliptic, we do not have two distinct routes, we do not have two distinct directions. We have, in the case of parabolic, there is only one direction, and that line will be parallel to this, and P here is influenced by all the points below this, and it influences all the points above this. So, it is like both are evolving, both hyperbolic and parabolic are evolving, but the difference between a parabolic case and a hyperbolic case is that P here is influenced by all the values in the initial condition here, and there also it is also influenced by the values of all the boundary conditions right up to the time t that we are considering here. So, P is influenced by boundary values over this part of the time boundary, this part of the space boundary, and this part of the boundary condition here. So, it is influenced by these boundary conditions, and it in turn influences all the points above it. Okay. Now, if you look at an elliptic case, then the point P is influenced by not only by the boundary conditions at t equal to 0 and up to the point of t at which P lies, but it is also influenced by these potentially what we can see as per this diagram as future boundary. Okay. So, in that sense it looks odd to have a future boundary condition influence the present. So, if that happens, it is not like an evolving time evolving problem, it is not an initial value problem, it is a boundary value problem, and in an elliptic cases are boundary value problems, and the solution here depends not on just this boundary or the closest boundary, it depends on all these boundaries here. So, this is also known as a jury problem, because this person, this criminal is or accused is being investigated by jury members all round it, and so all of them will take a look at this particular case. Okay. So, this is a boundary value problem, has a domain of dependence of on all the boundary values. So, that means that P should be sensitive to boundary, any change in any part of the boundary value here, whereas in this particular case P should be sensitive to only these boundary conditions and not these boundary conditions, and in the case of hyperbolic thing, P here would be sensitive to only changes in the boundary conditions between A and B, and not all these not any change here, not any change here. But if you go further up in time such that the characteristics intersect part of this, then they are then sensitive to these boundary conditions and these boundary conditions. So, hyperbolic cases are like very fast moving cases, and it takes time for these boundary points to have an influence on this. Okay. And boundary value problems are for a very slowly evolving system, or it is almost so slowly evolving it can be considered as quasi steady, and everybody in this room here can have their say, and then P will listen to all these boundary conditions, and then its value is settled. So in that sense, this is a time independent problem, and its value is influenced by all the boundary conditions here. So if you have a second order partial differential equation, the boundary conditions that you should specify for a proper solution depend on whether you have an elliptic type of problem or a parabolic type of problem or an elliptic type of problem. If it is an elliptic type, then the boundary conditions that are required are very clear. You should specify the boundary conditions over the entire domain. If it is a parabolic, then only these boundary conditions can be made to influence the value of P, and these boundary conditions should not be used at all in the evaluation of solution at point P. Okay. If the point P is moved forward, then these additional conditions should come in. In the case of hyperbolic equations, the solution at point P should be determined only using these initial conditions over this restricted boundary and not everywhere. So if you were to pose this P to be a function of the solution of the value at A prime, then it would be wrong, it would be physically wrong to do that. Okay. So this is about what type of boundary conditions and where to be specified. Okay. Boundary conditions come essentially in three types here. One is the Dirichlet type, where the value of the variable is specified at the boundary. So for example, zero velocity on a wall, or what we call as a no slip condition, where the velocity of the wall is equal to the velocity of the fluid at that particular wall condition. Similarly, the temperature is of the wall is the same as the temperature of the fluid which is adjacent to that. You can also have a slip condition at which the value of the temperature of the fluid at that particular location is different from the value of the wall by a small amount. It may be because you have an interface, and across the interface there is a small temperature drop. Okay. And similarly, when you are looking at microfluidic conditions, you usually have a slip boundary condition at the wall. So the velocity at the wall, even for fluid flow, is not exactly equal to 0, it is somewhat higher than 0. So you bring in a non-no slip boundary condition there. So where the value of the variable is specified, then you call that as a Dirichlet type, and where the value of the gradient is specified, it is a Neumann type of boundary condition. For example, a specified heat flux on a heated surface, or zero normal velocity gradient on a symmetry plane. So these are all, you are saying that dou phi by dou n equal to 0, or dou t by dou n times k with a minus sign. So that is the heat flux, and that is equal to some value 100,000 million watts per meter square is a condition where you are imposing directly on the gradient value that the solution can take. Minus k dt by dy equal to 1000 means that k is a given material property, so that fixes the value of dou t by dou y there. And a mixed type, it is also called as Robin type, where both the variable and its gradient are specified. For example, in the case of a wall with convective or radiative heat transfer. So in such a case, you say that the wall on the outside of the computational domain, you have for example natural convection, and natural convection means that there is a heat transfer coefficient which may be of the order of 5 to 10 watts per meter square degree centigrade, and that is the heat transfer coefficient with which heat is evacuated from the surface, and how much heat is evacuated, what heat flux it is, depends on the temperature difference between the wall and the ambient. So the heat flux there condition is T wall minus T ambient times H. So that brings in that is a kind of heat flux boundary condition. So that involves T wall and specification of the boundary condition in terms of heat flux brings in the temperature gradient. So, that brings in both the wall variable value at the wall and also the gradient. So, that type of thing is a mixer type, and all these kind of boundary conditions are encountered in real cases. And although we have been talking in terms of abstract boundary conditions here, when we look at practical fluid flow, then the boundary conditions are much more physical. For example, at a fluid solid boundary, in the case of temperature, we can say that there is a heat flux or there is a wall temperature. In the case of momentum, we say there is a no slip condition or free shear condition. So, that means that the velocity gradient is 0, or some shear stress condition. So, those type of things. Or in the case of free surface flows, free liquid surface, we can bring in the surface tension and we can bring in kinematic boundary conditions, dynamic boundary conditions, which take into account the curvature of the interface. And you can have a liquid vapor or a liquid liquid interface, and across this liquid liquid interface you can actually have mass transfer, whereas typically across a fluid solid boundary we do not have mass transfer. So, that is an impermeable wall boundary condition, something that we specify, except in certain special cases where we can specify, for example, a blowing surface, blowing boundary, or a suction type of boundary. That kind of thing is also sometimes brought in here. So, if you look at the three physical realistic boundary conditions, here you have a non-permeable rigid interface and a free liquid surface, free liquid vapor, liquid gas liquid interface is one which is not rigid, but it can move, it can deform, and you bring in surface tension and normal stress balances and all that. And third one is, it's not only, it may be rigid, it may be flexible, okay, it may deform, but it brings this condition here brings in the non-permeable nature, and across interface there can be mass transfer, and associated with the mass transfer there are other boundary conditions. And you can also have special geometry related boundary conditions. For example, what we have as typically inlet and exit sections. At the inlet you have flow coming in, or you have a pressure of so much, and that induces flow from outside into the domain. And exit is that there is essentially a passage for the flow to go out, exit the computational domain. So, there again you can bring in certain constant pressure on the outside, or you can say that the flow is fully developed, in which case the velocity gradient in the flow direction is equal to 0. So, these are all special type of boundary conditions that are helpful for us to introduce flow and take out flow, and also flow related things with this. And finally, you have some specialized geometry related conditions like symmetry plane, periodic plane, and for example, in quasi flow you have at the center you have a symmetry plane. So, that means that flow above this and flow below this is exactly the same. So, if you have a profile like this, parabolic profile like this, then the upper part is symmetric with respect to the bottom part. It is not necessary for us to compute bottom part if you know the upper part. So, we can say that we will consider only the upper half of the domain and impose the symmetry boundary condition here. And you can also have an anti-symmetry. So, here it is being in this direction and he is being pulled along in this direction. So, for example, plane Couette flow can have this type of boundary condition. And you can also have, for the rectangular case that we considered right in the very first example thing, we considered this whole cross section and then we made this into lots of points here. But in this thing here, the flow is symmetric about this half and this half are symmetric, and similarly this half and this half are symmetric, and this half and this half along the diagonal are symmetric. So, you can say that this whole thing is symmetric. There is a symmetry that 1/8 of the symmetry is there here. So, if you compute flow domain in this, then from this you can make use of symmetry plane and then transfer it to the other side, and once you have this whole thing, you can bring it to this side, and once you have this half, you can bring it to this hyphen and get the whole thing. So, that means that it was not necessary for us to have done simulation over the entire rectangular cross section. We could have done over 1/8 of the domain and used fewer number of points if we knew how to deal with the boundary conditions here. Okay. And you can also have these special kind of cases, a periodically self repeating unit. For example, in a heat exchanger you can have these kind of baffle plates, and flow comes in like this and then goes out like this. So, these kind of baffle plates are used to maintain good circulation of the flow, so that there is no bypassing and things like that. So, in such the geometry of the tube arrangement and all that can be quite complicated in this. So, in such a case, instead of tackling the full geometry, which will take many grid points, maybe we will take one repeating unit here, and then we put a periodicity boundary condition. So, we specify what is the pressure drop in this, and then we can calculate the flow distribution and see whether flow is going well through this, or whether it is just coming out like this, leaving a big recirculation loop here and loop here, where the tubes are not properly well irrigated. So, that means that there can be ineffective heat transfer in that. So, under what kind of conditions you have good flow pattern through this, and what will be the corresponding pressure drop in that, and how is the flow tube arrangement in that going to help us. All those kind of things can be investigated thoroughly by taking a small part of the domain and imposing periodic boundary conditions on this, rather than take all these baffle plates and then increase the number of grid points and increase the complexity of the solution and all that. So, you can have these kind of special conditions also that you can bring into play here. So, to sum up, initial and boundary conditions are part of the problem specification, part of the problem formulation, and there are certain considerations like well posedness that we have to bear in mind while specifying the boundary conditions, and while including the boundary conditions and initial conditions in our computation. But those results are essentially for a single quasi-linear second order equation. What we have in our actual condition are a set of coupled equations of this type. Okay, these are definitely quasi-linear, but these are coupled equations in the sense they do not involve a single variable, they involve lots of variables, and no equation can be solved independently. And these are also, there is a high degree of nonlinearity that is coming in this when we are dealing with high speed flows. So, in all these kind of things, you do not have that clear cut hyperbolic and parabolic and those type of nature associated with this. So, these are a mixture of hyperbolic, parabolic, or elliptic parabolic, and those type of situation actually arises, and we do not have a clear cut demarcation that yes, this is a hyperbolic problem and this is not a hyperbolic problem. And so, these things are thumb rules and guidelines that we have to keep in mind, and we have to keep in mind for potential problems that may arise in the solution. And if we do that, and if we apply sensible, well thought out boundary conditions, then we should be safe in getting a unique solution in most cases. But we should always question the type of boundary conditions and initial conditions that we specify. We should also question ourselves on the proper choice of the flow domain that we consider, because along with the flow domain we have the boundary conditions that are coming in, and what are the variables that we are evaluating, and what do we know about these variables at these boundaries. We have to really examine that in critical cases, and then accordingly we should specify the boundary conditions and the initial conditions. So, with this discussion, we can say that we have come to the end of the governing equations and problem formulation. In the next module, we will take that generic scalar transport equation that we derived in the tutorial problem, and then we look at how to go about doing a good solution numerically for that equation. And once we establish the principles by which we can get a good solution, then we can come back to the set of coupled equations that we have derived and then look at the solution of all these things. So that is what is there in the next two modules. So the first module is how to get a solution for for one equation incorporating the generic features of fluid flow that we will encounter, and the next module is on how to solve all these equations together. Thank you.